What are we talking about today? We're talking about persistence with the file manager and the documents directory. On Monday, we introduced user defaults as a persistence mechanism. We introduced user defaults on Monday as a persistence mechanism so that we could save data from the user. Anytime we talk about persistence, it's saving data in iOS development. There's many ways to save data. There's many ways to do persistence in iOS. On Monday, we took a look at user defaults. User defaults is a basic dictionary that has a key and a value associated with it. So if I want to save the user's background profile for an app, for example, if the user prefers orange over white, they could select orange in my application. When the user comes back to the application, they will see an orange background. User defaults is recommended. Any data we save in user defaults should be very similar to a settings piece of data, right? So I go to my Xcode, I change my settings in preferences to large font. That's a good user default action there, right? Simple data points, a color, a measurement, like we did with one of our applications. A measurement meaning the unit of measurement that the user prefers, whether it be miles or kilometers, right? Or millimeters if the user is a snail, who knows, right? So user defaults is ideal for that. Simple data, that gets the job done. If you want to save more complex objects, bigger objects in your application, user defaults is not the preferred way to do that. Why is it not the preferred way? Because as our application loads, it loads everything from user defaults into the application, right? So the bigger the object in user defaults, the slower the app will take to load. Today, we'll take a look at saving objects, saving data in the user's documents directory. Every application, if we go back to the lesson here, every application has what's known as a sandbox, right? So here I have my app, and I have a sandbox. So every app, I have my app, it's called Instagram. It has its own sandbox. So the user of that Instagram app could save their data to the sandbox of that application, right? If I have a different app, I have Snapchat on my app, on my phone. Snapchat data cannot be saved to Instagram data, right? They're different, right? That's the secure mechanism that Apple uses. So every app has its own storage box. Every app has its own place to store data, to store the user's data. That is known as the app sandbox. You have a sandbox to play in. That's your sandbox. Every app has its own sandbox. So again, to reiterate, user defaults is used as a persistence mechanism to save simple data. I have a horoscope app. The user is a Sagittarius. They want to be, every time they come to the app, they want to see Sagittarius as the default horoscope. That's an ideal use case for user defaults. You save in one string. Your app loads back up. It searches. Is there a value for the key zodiac sign key? Is there a value for it? If there is a value for it, my app will load with the default that the user chooses on that horoscope. Okay. Today we'll be talking about FileManager. FileManager, think of FileManager as the finder on your Mac, on your laptop. Anytime you want to do anything, you want to search for a file, where do you go? Yes, you could do Command Space, but Command Space is still accessing the Finder. So anything you want to search for on a Mac, you go to Finder. Finder, Documents, whatever folder you're looking for, you go inside that folder, correct? On iOS, macOS, tvOS, watchOS, we have access to the file system via what's known as the file manager. The file manager is the class that manages the file system. Right? So here, the file manager, a convenient interface to the contents, of the file system. And the primary means of interacting with it. So I want to access that sandbox to save something on behalf of the user. I'm using the file manager to get access to the documents directory. So I'm using basically the Finder to get to the documents directory to save any information for the user. So the main class that we need in order to access the documents directory, because if you want to save anything to the documents directory, different from user defaults, very simple to access, right? Yes, it might take us, right? There were moving parts with our lab, but at the end of the day, to save something in user defaults, it's one line of code. User default standard, set whatever you want to save. But with documents directory, there's more moving parts. You need to use the file manager to access the documents directory in order to write or to read from it. So the simple things we do in our laptop, we go to our Finder here. I go to my Finder, I click on my Finder. Clicking on the Finder is basically saying, hey, file manager, I want you to access something. Okay, so clicking on that file manager, that's the way we access contents of the file system. So file manager is the main class there. So please write notes as we're going through here. So know that the file manager is basically similar to the Finder. The file manager is responsible for accessing the file system on iOS, macOS, tvOS, watchOS, Glasses OS, right? All those OSs there. Any questions about file manager or user defaults as we keep going down the list there? Any questions so far? Yes, sir. As far as like where it saves, we don't know. It's up to the system takes care of that. That's hidden away from developers. I can go access user defaults contents physically, or I don't know where it is, right? As we go deeper into today's lesson, you'll see where documents directory is physically, but you cannot see where user defaults is. Okay? It's a dictionary that's stored in the storage system, but as far as like knowing where it is, we don't know where it is. We know we could save to it, we could read from it. It's not inside documents directory or where it is. I'm sorry? Well, there's reasons for that. If you could access user defaults, you could probably do things. There's just reasons for that. There's certain things that's private and open for us. It depends on what Apple recommends or Apple wants to do with their APIs, right? Okay, any other questions? I saw a next hand up. Tiffany, you had a question?
No, I'm just going to say that technically there's probably no access to it because, for example, like if you want to log into...
Logging in is not, you do not want to put anything secured in user defaults as far as like passwords or anything like that.
So where do passwords and things go?
Passwords would go on a secure server or in Apple's keychain.
So you would save it as what?
Passwords are encrypted, and password encryption will not be handled by you.
So you just take it in whatever that text.
And you pass it over to the server, and the server takes care of the encryption of it. Because yes, developers, there are known situations where developers save people's passwords as raw text, and that's not good, right? Like, you don't want to expose user passwords. Let the server encrypt it and take care of it. Or you could use Apple Keychain. You know, like Keychain, when it prompts you for your username password, that saves locally on your machine as a Keychain access security. As far as like core curriculum, we don't exactly get into Keychain, but we might be able to do it with the current curriculum if we have time to talk about Keychain access and stuff like that. Cool. All right, so as far as like locations of user defaults, we don't know where that is. FileManager we spoke about. We spoke about the App Sandbox. Each app has its own sandbox. We said that. Each app has its own container. Its own place to save the user's data, the user's information. Yeah, each app has its own space to save stuff. Okay. As we get deeper into lesson today, we'll see what throwing functions are. But basically, we used JSON decoder already, we used JSON encoder already, and we know those throw errors, correct? But we've never written our own function that throws an error. So today we'll come to a point where we're writing a function that throws an error. So basically, throwing functions, it explicitly throws an error. So our function will be very similar in usage. So the function we write will be very similar in usage to somebody implementing like a JSON decoder where they have to say do catch. So for now, I'm just talking about what throwing functions are, but we'll see what it is in code. But throwing functions, basically, it allows us to throw an error. If there's an error, we throw the error. So somebody using our function, they are required to use a try on it. Everybody? Okay? If you are required to use a try on a function, that means the function is throwing an error. We spoke about documents directory. Documents directory is for permanent storage. If the user saves a photo, they expect when they come back to the application that the photo is in the app. So documents directory is permanent storage. If I save a podcast, I save a movie, whatever content I save, I want to make sure that when I come back to the application, that podcast, that WWDC video, whatever it is that I saved, must be there when I come back. We do not save permanent photos or whatever it is in the caches directory, right? Caches directory is for temporary storage. So when we go to our browser or whatever, we want to empty out cache. That's like your history of your searches, whatever that is. You could delete that. But as far as like password information, you want to save that. That's permanent, right? When you tell Google, remember my password, it doesn't put it in cache. Right? Cache, anytime you think of cache, cache is up to the operating system to say when I want to get rid of the cache. Because maybe I'm running low on memory or whatever it is. Cache is temporary. Documents is permanent. But today we won't exactly get into caches directory. We will only be focusing on documents directory for now. Okay, that takes us to the two key classes we need to do the saving and the retrieving. Back when we did Unit 3, we spoke about getting data from online or pushing data. When we push data to a web service, what are we doing? What HTTP method are we using? Hands up? Hands up? May? Post, right? So May says we use the post method when we want to push data to a web API. And what class? It's right there. Okay, come back to that when it's not there. All right, so we use JSON encoder when we want to encode our Swift model to data to say, hey, go ahead, HTTP request URL session, post that data. We want to encode our Swift model. Our model could be a horoscope model. It could be a country's model, whatever it is, an element model. I want to say, hey, I want to favorite an element. I can't take a Swift object directly and push it to my web API. I have to take that Swift object, encode it into data, JSON data here, and then post it using JSON encoder class. Yes? Very similar. In documents directory, we use property list encoder to take the same Swift model. The same Swift model we could post to a web API. We could take that same Swift model and save it in documents directory, but we're using a different class for that. We're not using JSON encoder. We'll be using property list encoder. Okay? Again, the name property list implies it needs to be a property list. And in order for our type to be compatible with this class, it has to conform to Codable. Okay? Yes, sir?
I want to make sure I understand it correctly. So we're using property list encoder and decoder to perform a very similar function?
Yes.
To save to the local.
Exactly, exactly. So as Greg is reiterating there, we are using property list encoder to convert our Swift model to data to save to our documents directory. As I said yesterday, there is more moving parts here than user defaults. At the end of the day, you'll be like user defaults, right? It's straightforward. But documents directory, there's more moving parts there. I need a handle, FileManager. FileManager needs to access documents directory. Then I could write to the documents directory with some file that I provide. Okay, so again, property list encoder is that class that's responsible for taking my Swift object, converting to data, type data, to say data write to, okay? I need it to be data so that I could write it to that documents directory. Questions before we move on? Please take notes as we're talking about it here. Nothing is better than writing your own notes from your own point of view there. So really take notes here. So it's counterpart to, now we save to documents directory. The user opens the application. They go to their favorites tab. They want to see all their favorites. If they save favorites, they better see their favorites or they'll delete your app and give you a star in the App Store, right? They took the time, they annotated some note-taking app. They came back, the note is not there. Like, oh my God, what's happening? Worst app ever, right? So they click the favorites or they click whatever that they saved. They open it up. They see all their favorites or they see all the notes they did. Awesome. The way they're able to see that or the way we are able to read from the documents directory is using the property list decoder. Decoder, take it out of documents directory. When we take it out from documents directory, what type is it? It's data, right? When we retrieve from documents directory, it's a data object. Now we need to take that data object and convert it back to our Swift model. And the class responsible for that is property list decoder. Take the data, decode it. Take the data, decode it to my Swift object. Okay? And again, here we're saying it's very similar to JSON decoder because when we grab an API, Postman, whatever, that's data, right? That's JSON data. We can't do anything with that. We cannot say data dot first name. We have to take that data and convert it to a Swift model. So those are like the key concepts of what we're talking about today. And again, there is a lot of moving parts here. But that will get us to save into documents directory, which is permanent storage in the App Sandbox of whatever app we're doing. Today we're using the scheduler app. So the scheduler app has its App Sandbox, places where it could save stuff, the documents directory. We're able to save into the documents directory. So the objectives of today, at the end of the day, at the end of the lesson, we'll be able to access an app's documents directory. So we'll know how to access the documents directory. And the documents directory, it returns a URL. Not a URL where you go www.github.com, a URL to a file path, a file in the system. How do I access a file in the system? So we get back a URL. That URL points us to the documents directory. At the end of the lesson, you'll be able to persist data changes to the documents directory. Persist again, you'll be able to save changes. Our app is the scheduler app. If I create an event, I want the event to be there when I relaunch the app. So you'll be able to write data, get comfortable with knowing what write is. Write is saving. If I write something, I'm saving something. I take a pen to paper, I'm saving something to paper. I'll be able to read data, meaning I open up the app, I'm able to get back my events. I'll be able to delete an event. An event is done, I swipe to delete. When I relaunch the app, that event should be gone. Yes, sir? We are not making our own documents directory. Same as when you install a new version of macOS, it comes with a documents directory by default. Yeah. But within the documents directory, we'll be making a file that we have an extension .plist in the file. We're not making our own documents directory. Like every app has its own documents directory. Yes, exactly. So again, to reiterate Adan's question, do we make our own documents directory? No, we don't. Every app has a documents directory, very similar to our Mac OS or our Windows OS. Whatever OS we have some sort of documents directory to save stuff.
Wait, so the documents directory specific to the app, or is the documents directory specific to the phone?
Every app has its own documents directory, right? So if we go back to the sandbox analogy here, every app has its own documents directory. There's different containers. There's a documents container, there's a library, there's a caches, but one documents directory, one app. App A cannot talk to the documents directory of app B. Okay? Okay, so we'll be able to access documents directory, we'll be able to process data, write, read, delete. When we talk about write, read, delete, by the way, I'll just put this in here. CRUD. CRUD. CRUD is used throughout computer science. Anybody know what CRUD means? No? Okay. CRUD basically, again, throughout programming, throughout computer science, CRUD means the functionalities of everything as far as modifying an object. Can I create? So create is C. C is create. Can I create an event? Okay? Anybody knows what R, since we said create, what was R? Read, right? The thing I created, can I read it back? What's U? Update. Can I update an event? Right? And D? Delete. Excellent. So now we know what CRUD is. One second. So we said create. We said read. We said update. And we said delete. Right? So any object you're dealing with, Tiffany, ideally you want the user to do all those functions. I mean, there's cases where, for example, Twitter, right? Twitter doesn't allow you to do what? Edit. I cannot update a tweet. Very good. I could create a tweet, I could read a tweet, I could delete a tweet, but I cannot update a tweet. In Instagram, can you do everything?
Yeah.
Up to a point. What can't you not update?
You can edit, but you can't like edit how many pictures. You can't add a picture to a post.
So you cannot update a photo, period.
No.
Right? If you want to update that photo, you got to delete the thing and redo it. Right? So at the end of the day, as a developer, it's up to you to know what you want to implement on that app. But at basic, the user, if they created something, they should be able to delete it, right? At minimum. And read it, of course, right? If I create it, I should be able to see it again. So when CRUD is thrown around, we know what CRUD is. Everybody? Okay. So if our application, for now, I don't think we'll be updating. But keep in mind, updating would be very similar to anything else there. But it just implies an next UI, right? So you probably have a detailed view or something where the person clicks on the event and able to update and say save update or something. Yes?
This is probably redundant, but I just want to know that I understand. You're saying that for create, read, update, and delete. These are the functionalities of the object that you're creating.
Of any object you create, period.
Okay, so your user should be able to do this with your object.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, as I said, with Twitter, Instagram, we see there's different places there, right? Based on the business rules of the app. But at minimum, if the user creates something, I create like a horoscope, for example. I should be able to edit, or maybe it's up to you. I should be able to delete and update.
And they would always use
That across the board.
but that would always usually be a struct. Which struct would be involved?
Struct class, whatever object you have. Yeah, whatever object you have, anything you create, basically that's what it looks like. And that goes across the board, right? Like you create a car, you should be able to fix the car, update the car, whatever. Anything you, like real life objects, object-oriented projects, you have CRUD in there. Yes? Tanya, questions? Questions? I really want to talk about the theory because there's a lot of moving parts in code there that we need to know every part of it that we're doing. So at a high level, when I say high level, I'm talking about talking to you, talking before we see code, talking about what we're going to implement. At a high level, this is what we're doing. So step one is access the documents directory. If you access the documents directory, you open up your Finder, right? Where you want to save the thing? Where do we want to save? Documents directory, correct? What are we saving? If I say, go create some notes.txt file, what are you doing? Take me through what you're doing. If I tell you create me a text file in documents directory, tell me what procedures are you doing on your laptop? What are you doing?
Right now, from what we know you,
What you tell a user to do?
wait, what would I tell them?
Yeah, the instructions you would give that user.
I guess that they would be typing into a text field and they would probably use an enter button.
Physically, like on the laptop right now, somebody never use a Mac or whatever, they come to you.
Oh, so you say use default.standard.set?
Not iOS, the Finder on your laptop.
Oh, you tell them to go to Finder and you would type in what you're looking for to a certain line?
Go to Finder. I want them to create a notes.txt file in the documents directory.
Create a notes.txt file. You go to Finder. You go to Documents or Desktop wherever you like. There's a settings button there where you go to kind of
Okay, I'll do it as you said. So first step,
Okay, first step is to go and type in, well, go to the bottom and type promo parts.
okay, click on Finder, first step. Do we all agree?
Yes.
First step, click on Finder. Okay?
Then when you get to Finder, you can go to Documents or Desktop wherever you like.
We need it to be desktop.
Okay, Desktop.
So step 2, documents. Yes? Okay, those 2 steps, step 1, Finder, step 2, documents, that is how we access the documents directory in code, right? The way we'll be doing it, we're using the FileManager, and we'll tell FileManager, get me the URL that points to the documents directory. We need to do that for the first step. Before I do anything, I need to do that step. I need to get access to the documents directory. Okay, now I'm in the documents directory, what else am I doing?
When you get to Documents directory, right-click and create a folder.
Okay, so for now, we'll just say we create some folder. Now, creating that folder, once I get to the documents directory, I need to provide a name. What is the name of that thing I'm going to save? Right? So for now, we'll just simply say notes here. I'll just simply say notes for now and press enter. That whole action that we just did in the project we'll be building today, we have to do it using the file manager, get the URL from the file manager, append a file name to the URL, and then we could write and read to that file. Okay? So that will be the first step in what we do today. Okay? So let's go back again. Thank you, Tiffany, for that. Awesome. So we spoke about CRUD. Any questions before we move on? Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so let's start with the code. Let's go to our app. We all have scheduler. Let's run scheduler and make sure it works as intended here. So when we run scheduler, Chelsea is not here right now, but back in Unit 2, Chelsea asked the question. We were creating, let's all go create an event. Create an event, so click on add. And I'll create an event here. I'll call it Friday lunch. I'll say lunch is at 1. I'll say lunch is at 1 o'clock. I'll click return, and I'll click create event. I have Friday lunch here. Do we all have our event? Okay. So back in Unit 2, we kill the app. So we click on the stop button. Back in Unit 2, we clicked on the stop button. We clicked on the play button to run the app again. And my event is not there, right? My event is no longer there. So Chelsea's question was, how can we fix that? How can I come back to my app and see the event I created? Use the keyboard, because the keyboard is expecting the return key. Make sure your keyboard is visible. Okay? Awesome. The keyboard, bring up your keyboard when you're editing the key, when you're editing the event. Make sure your keyboard is visible. Command-Shift-K. Command-Shift-K. Okay, so our event is no longer there. This is not acceptable, correct? Back in Unit 2, we used this project to illustrate table views. We working on table views. We use this app to show basic table views. I created something, I insert it to my table view, it populates the table view. That was the objective of the app. But now we're in Unit 4. The objective of that app now is to save the content. When I create an event, I want that event to persist. So that when, through different launches of the app, the event persists, the event saves. That's the objective of today. So when I create my Friday lunch, I want to come back and see Friday lunch there. If I delete, for example, if I delete review, and I stop the app, I run the app again, review is still there. That does not persist. So we also need to fix that. We'll fix all those using the documents directory and the file manager. Okay? Any questions? Okay, cool. So we said to do anything, absolutely anything, with the documents directory, we need what? What? We need the URL to the documents directory, okay? So let's go do that first. Let's achieve that first here. So let's see our file structure. Let us organize our files a little bit here. I will take app delegate, scene delegate, main, assets, launch. Don't touch the info plist, please. So I'll take those files and I'll put them in a folder called supporting files. Okay. I have two controllers. I will group them together. So new group from selection. And those are controllers. I have one model. I'll put it in a models folder. So this is what my structure looks like. Right? So we have controllers, we have two controllers, we have one model, and we have supporting files. I'll move models up here, like that. All right, great. So we'll create an extension. We'll create an extension on FileManager. We'll call the extension FileManager plus extensions. So let's go create. Let's create a new file. It's a Swift file. And let's call it FileManager extensions. So File Manager plus extensions, we click on Create. Great. So we're in our new file. We'll use the keyword extension to extend File Manager. So we're extending File Manager to include a new function on File Manager. So when I say File Manager dot get documents directory, it returns me a URL.
It's the Swift file, right?
Yeah, it's a Swift file. It doesn't subclass anything.
It's the Swift file, and we made the Swift file called what?
File Manager plus extensions. That's the name right here. File Manager plus extensions. You're welcome. Okay, cool. So let's continue on. We'll have a static function here called get documents directory. What did we say documents directory returns? A URL. Very good. How did we say we accessing the documents directory? What's the class there? What class are we using to access the documents directory? What class are we using to access the documents directory? File Manager, yes? Thank you, Amini, sorry. We're using File Manager. File Manager is the main class that's responsible for the file system. That's what we said earlier. And we wrote notes there, right? We wrote notes about it, yes? So when you, in the interview, they ask you, what is the class responsible for the file system? Thankfully, it starts with file. That's a beginning. It has manager in there, also helpful. So the file responsible for accessing the documents directory is File Manager, okay? So File Manager has a singleton called default. And here you see the singleton says the shared File Manager object for the process, okay, for the application, the running of that app. In the running of that app, you have one shared instance. Everybody? When I say shared, what comes to mind? No matter how we try to decouple the network helper, it just always stays there. I know. So it's a singleton, right? Singleton. It's a design pattern that's around for a long time, been around for a long time, is everywhere through iOS. So File Manager has a singleton called default. Very similar to user default, it has a singleton called. I know you always want to say shared, but it's standard. I do the same thing. So user default's dot standard, right, everybody? Yes? Okay, so here we have our default. So File Manager dot default, and we say dot URL. So here we want dot URL. We'll give it a path directory, and we'll give it a domain mask. So what does that mean? So here, what do we need? We need access to the documents directory. So if I type in dot, let me do that again, dot D, there's a lot of different documents directories here. There's desktop, obviously we're now working with the desktop. Documents, every device has a documents directory. So we are after the documents directory. This is what we want. So the first argument asks you, what do you want? What directory are you looking for? Okay? What directory are you looking for? And as I said, there's also caches. Caches is temporary. Okay? The ImageKit library that I wrote uses the caches directory by default to cache images when you go through a table view or a collection view. Why caches directory? It's temporary. Okay? So that way you're not reloading or asking the network again for an image, it caches it temporarily. very similar to a browser. It will cache your history. That way, the minute you start typing some browser name, some URL name, it knows where you're going because it cached it for optimal performance. So here, where am I? Oh, because there's a array of URLs. You could get back an array of URLs here because the function is URLs. It returns you an array of URLs. So here, we're not after caches directory, we're after documents directory. And what are we looking for? We are interested in the user's documents directory. So here we put user domain mask. Domain mask is based on the user's, the current user. Give me the current user's documents directory. What's that? So two things. One, yes, exactly, the current user. So two things here, documents directory, that's what we want, that's what the function is called, and get me the user's document directory. But we have one problem. This returns an array of URLs. We don't want an array of URLs, we want one URL. Right? So here, we are indexing the first URL because there's only one documents directory on an application. For now, until something changes, there's only one documents directory for that app. So we access the first object. For the app, exactly, for the users. Yes, go ahead. URLs means an array. Yes. For the current user of the application. I have my Instagram app running. Get me the documents directory for my account. Because there's only one documents directory. As we'll see when we open up documents directory, there's only one documents directory. Like if I go to my Finder here, there's one documents directory, right? So I'm only interested in that documents directory. That's very similar to the Mac OS itself. There's one documents directory, get me that URL. Get me the URL to that documents directory. There's no other documents directory. If there were like 3 documents directory, that would be different. But there's only one documents directory in my Finder. Do we agree? Not this one. We'll see a simulator has, with the simulator, we could see the actual documents directory. With the device, we cannot, obviously for reasons there. But we'll be able to see the simulator documents directory. We'll print that path and we'll actually go to it. So for now, look at our Finder. We have one documents directory. This is what we access in. Not like that exact one, but similar. Okay? So there's many URLs. As you see here, there's many paths. So get me not all those URLs. I only want one URL to the documents directory. Everybody? Right? So visually, this is what it's doing. The file manager could get you all the URLs. But I do not want all the URLs. I only want one specific URL to the documents directory, one documents directory. I index 0. Okay? That's the one place you don't have to check if it's 0. I mean, if count is, right? As long as I've been doing iOS, it's always index 0. Nothing has changed yet here, so that's fine. Question, yes?
What would be, like, which one of those URLs would have more than one?
When we get into maybe iPad development, if we get into it, right now the iPad has more functionality and more windows and more things going on. We could see instances of that, but for now, with the scope, exactly. For the scope of this or any production app you want to work on, one documents directory. Okay. Within the documents directory, you could create your own directories or folders or files, whatever. Very similar to Finder. Okay. But at least as long as you have access to that documents directory, you could read and write to it. You could even delete all the contents of it.
So this is kind of like, you know, when we look up JSON data and like one of the JSON data is, I don't know how to explain it, but this is something in my head, like let's say it's names or something
Something similar, yes. But again, visually, it's right here. I open up Finder. I open up Finder. I go to Documents directory. So now I have a path to Documents directory. That code we're doing there right now that's what we're trying to do right now. That exact functionality. The app launches, it's getting the URL to the Documents directory. Yes, Yulia?
So I have a question. So this function get document directory, you release it all the time?
All the time.
Because we need access to do something, to create, to get it.
Exactly. I've never heard somebody ask an interview question about like the actual specifics of the code here, because that's something you're not going to memorize, right? But knowing how to get it is important, if that makes sense. But you're not going to memorize the code here. But yes, you're using that same code. As long as you want to write to the Documents directory, that code is the same. Default. Oh, this default here? It's a singleton. It's a singleton. So when we have our user preference that shared we wrote, it's a singleton. One instance of FileManager exists throughout the application. So we've seen FileManager that default. We've seen URL session that default, right? Let's see. URL session. Yes. No, you don't have to import. It's a foundation class. URL session that's shared. That's a singleton as well. So we've seen that. We've seen user defaults, that's standard, right? So all those are singletons. And what's a singleton? There's one instance of it throughout the app, right? It's a class. Class is reference types. I only have one reference throughout my application, right? There's no reason why they should have two instances of Finder on Mac OS or two instances of FileManager, right? One instance, one file system. Cool. So throughout iOS, you'll see a lot of singletons. UI application has a singleton, FileManager, user defaults, call location, all that stuff there. Cool? All right, so we are good here. That function is happy. So again, the one main function of this is to function gets URL path to documents directory. And the way we access it is FileManager dot get documents directory. That makes it, what type of method is this? If I'm accessing it using a static function, what type of method is that? Is that an instance method or a type method? As we get closer to, we have to really be type method, right? It works on the type. I'm not creating an instance of FileManager. I'm not creating an instance of FileManager. I'm using it on the type. Everybody? Yes, not that alone. Not only that. No. Not because I have an extension. I could see if I remove this static keyword here, it makes it an instance.
Oh, so you can only use it inside?
If I say, we gotta be careful here. If I say function here, I need to make an instance of FileManager. So I need to say FileManager equal to FileManager. And then I could say FileManager dot. Be careful there. As we get closer to the end, the promised land, we gotta know the differences between those. So here, this is a type method. And this here would be an instance method if we have func. Everybody with me? If there's no static in front of the func, it makes it an instance method, okay? Instance works on an instance. This is an instance. I created an instance of FileManager, okay? Yes? Okay. All right, cool. So make that back static here. Great. So let's go test that out. Let's go to our schedule list controller. Schedule list controller and go to viewDid load. Go to schedule list controller and go to viewDid load, and here we'll simply print path to documents directory. And here we'll simply say print FileManager dot get documents directory. viewDid load of schedule list controller. We simply put a print statement there. So when the app launches, we get a print statement. I mean, yes, we could write a unit test for it or something like that, where we test to make sure the string is not nil or something like that, right? But here we just have a simple print statement in our viewDid load. So let's go ahead and run the app. Run the app, and you'll get if everything went well, everything should have gone well here. Everybody has a documents directory. We all should have a console log with file and the path to the documents directory. Do we see that? Do we all see that? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. It's Friday. Get in there. Copy, let's go ahead and copy that string. Copy the string. Don't copy file. Copy the first / all the way to documents / Copy the string. The first 3 / all the way to the last one. Copy that. So copy it. And command space. Command space brings up Spotlight. Paste it in. Command V. It takes you right there, right away. Look at that. It takes you directly to the documents directory. You could click on it, and let's zoom in here. Okay. At this point, we should all see documents, libraries, system data, and temp. Yes? Double click on your documents. You got documents, you got there. Just double click on documents. And if you want to have your grid show up like mine, click on this column here. So have columns here. Show items as icons. Yeah, just change the grid. Oh, that should not be there. Don't worry about that. I'll just delete that for now. Your documents should be empty. Everybody? What? Make sure you copy from the first / all the way to the last / and you'll get it. Yeah, that as well. You could get rid of documents. Okay, at this point, do we all see visually the documents folder? Great. Kelby? Cool. Don? All right. No, that's fine. Yeah, it's empty. It should be empty. No. It should be empty. We haven't written anything to it. We haven't. The only thing we've done so far is got the path, got the URL to it. That's why we're able to command space and get to the documents directory. Okay, everybody? Any questions about the code we just wrote or what we just did? So we were able to get to the path. Using that path, yes, sir? Temporary files, whatever files that's not permanent files based on the app, you could write to temporary files. So the places you could write to, let's go over that, I should brought that up. If you save in permanent data, like I'm saving a photo, I'm saving a book, I'm saving some Bezier path, anything that the user is creating and the user expects it to be saved, Where you put it is in the documents folder. Everybody, okay? If you want to have temporary cache, for example, you would put it in the caches directory. This here in the library, the caches directory is where you put temporary data. Temporary data goes into the caches directory. Anything permanent that the user needs, Spotify, you download some Spotify music, where does it go? In documents folder. Okay?
So basically, FileManager allows us access to all of those.
Yep. The file manager is that umbrella to the file system. All right, I know we haven't done much code, but I'll take a break here because I really don't want to go through this, even if we got to come back Monday. I want us to know every step that we're doing and how we're achieving what we're doing and why. So the first step we've just done is got to the documents directory. When we come back from break, we'll create a file that will live in the documents directory, and we could read and write to that file. That file will be a property list file. The extension will be plist. Very similar to our info plist, we'll have a schedule plist or schedules plist. So we could read and write to it. It's like our database. Okay? So we'll take a break here and we'll come back.